Hi everybody, it is that time of year where everyone starts shopping for things for their loved ones, and people on YouTube like me give our obligatory gift buying guides. So that's what I wanted to do today, is I want to put together a list of 10 books that I am recommending as gifts that you might want to consider purchasing for someone in your life. Now, there's a lot of tongue firmly in cheek here on this list, as you'll be able to see. The categories I came up with are completely arbitrary. Basically, I came up with 10 books that I think I really liked, that I want to encourage people to take a look at and actually do think would make good gifts, and then I came up with categories to kind of shoehorn them in to fit them into this video. So that's how I approach this, but I really do want to talk through these books. Not all of them came out this year. Most of them came out within the past year and a half or so. A few of them came out a while ago, but I read them all the past year. I read them all recently, and so that's why they're top of mind for me. And so I'm just going to walk through, highlight a little bit about what I liked about each one, and maybe you'll be able to think of somebody in your life that you would want to check this out for this holiday season, or maybe you'll just buy it for yourself. I'll leave that up to you. But the first one I want to highlight is what I'm calling the gift for the skeptic in your life. This is the person who, maybe they're agnostic, maybe they're post-church, maybe they are de-churched or deconstructed, but importantly, this is a person who is not an angry skeptic, but a genuinely curious and seeking skeptic, someone who is looking for thoughtful responses to their questions. And that book, for me, is Ross Douthat's Believe, Why Everyone Should Be Religious. This is not going to solve the mysteries of the universe for anybody, but it is a well-written, I think it's a really exceedingly well-written book that responds to so many very, very common skeptical critiques of not just institutional religion, but even just the idea of religious belief in general. And what I like about this book so much is he takes kind of a funnel approach. He talks about very, very broad-minded questions and responses to just the idea of even believing at all, like why even believe anything. He starts there and then gradually narrows in and gets to more specific critiques of like particular critiques in responses to the way Christian churches have handled power differentials or abuse or things like that. So he covers the whole gamut, but he starts very wide, super thoughtful, and more than anything, I just really, really like, he has kind of this acerbic, wry sense of biting humor that kind of is threaded throughout his whole book. And so I think this would be a great book for someone who is not just a skeptic in an angry sense, like I said, but someone who's like genuinely looking for kind of a thoughtful dialogue partner. It'd be a great one to read with somebody like that, actually. Now, I'm calling this one a gift for the burnt out thinker or the burnt out theology reader, someone who is maybe just, and I've been there at times myself, so I know what I'm talking about here. Someone who's maybe just feels like they've read so much that they're almost just kind of like tired of thinking about theological questions, or maybe they're just tired they've been burned by debates, or they've been hurt by, I don't know, a hot take on social media, someone who disagreed with them on something. This is just the person who's just kind of worn out on thinking theologically, but they still have enjoyed it in their past. This is the book I'm going to recommend for that person, which is Slow Theology. This is probably one of, if not the newest one on my list here, but this is by A.J. Swoboda and Nijay Gupta. I just really, really liked this book and the posture of this book especially. And in Slow Theology, they are not so much talking about specific theological points, but they're more talking about the way to do theology in our time. And more than anything, I thought of this book specifically because it's so encouraging and inspiring. I read a lot of it in one sitting because it was speaking so much to my soul, and I felt myself refreshed by it, and that's why I thought of it as a gift for the burnt out thinker, a gift for the burnt out reader. I think that the person who reads Slow Theology is going to find themselves really ministered to by AJ and Nijay's like honesty and the stuff that they kind of confess about their own theological journeys that they've been on. And I put the book down just feeling encouraged to keep going. To keep thinking theologically, to keep learning, and to embrace the journey as what it means to even be doing theology is to be on a lifelong journey. So I think that this book would be really helpful for someone who's kind of on the burnt out end. Now, this one is for the person who's not necessarily burnt out on theology per se, but the person who's burnt out on the Bible specifically, who's just tired of arguments about the Bible, who has like read really deeply on biblical studies. Maybe they've even been in seminary and gone down the deep academic route, and they're just kind of burnt out on Scripture, and they're just a little tired of it. For this person, I recommend the wonderful, wonderful little book, The Paradise King by Blaine Eldridge. I was turned on to this by a viewer of this channel, actually, and I'll forever be thankful for that recommendation, because I don't think I would have heard of this otherwise. But this is a remarkable book and is, to my mind, incredibly unique. It's a book that if you pitch it as, oh, it's just telling the meta-narrative of Scripture, a lot of people like me would just roll their eyes and be like, okay, I'll put that on the pile of 30 other books that are trying to do that I've read, that are all saying the same stuff. But this one is not the same as any of them. It really isn't. It is... I read a lot of fantasy fiction. One of my like favorite kind of fun reading avenues is fantasy and science fiction. And so I read a lot of epic fantasy, and this book really feels like you're reading a fantasy book, like an epic fantasy book. He takes slices of, especially in the Old Testament narrative. I think it's a little weaker when it gets to the New Testament side, to be honest, but the Old Testament stuff is just so gobsmackingly good. He takes slices, famous characters, King David, for example. No surprises in the characters that show up, Abraham, etc. But the way he reimagines their experiences with God and their experiences in the Old Testament story are so vivid and so alive and infused with this imaginative style that I just found so compelling and fun. And it was one of those books that I was just like talking about to nonstop to like kind of all my like pastor friends after I read it, because I was just so like kind of knocked over by the approach. And the thing that really is the kicker on it, not only is it so unique in its style and compelling if you like reading fiction especially, but it's really shockingly well researched. Like, as I was reading each kind of chapter on the Old Testament, I thought, okay, this is super creative, but this is not. He's just playing fast and loose with the homework. But he's really not. When you dig into the research he did behind it, it is impressive how he sourced the way he presented the story in like real research, even into things like geography and kind of ancient cultural context. So man, Paradise King is a fantastic book. I definitely think someone who's burnt out on the Bible would be revitalized by reading it. Hi everyone, I'm excited to announce a partnership that I'm forging with Kairos Classroom. Some of you may have heard of Kairos Classroom already. If not, I'm going to give you just a little bit of an overview of what it is. Now, I'm using that word partnership intentionally because I really am viewing this as a partnership. This is not just me shilling something. But what Kairos Classroom is an online program for learning biblical languages, Greek and Hebrew. And what I like about Kairos' Classroom's model is that they are kind of trying to push back on some of the fully asynchronous, kind of do it at your own pace models that are out there, and yet it is fully online. So they are combining, in my view, they're trying to combine the best of online education with the best of kind of more cohort model education. So if you take a class with them, you're in a small group that actually works through the material together, and they are set up in modules so that in 1 year, if you go through all their modules, you can achieve competence in biblical Greek or biblical Hebrew in 1 year if you stick through it and go through their modules in kind of the pace that they have set up. And it's also affordable. And so I'm excited about this partnership, and I am putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak, because I'm actually going to be taking modules from Kairos. So I have been looking for a way to gain competence in Hebrew specifically for some time, and so this partnership is actually going to give me the chance to do that. So I am actually taking Hebrew. As I record this is late in 2025. I'm taking their primer, and then I'm going to take Hebrew 1 starting in January of 2026. And so I'm going to be using Kairos Classroom. So I am not boosting something I'm not willing to participate in. And if you take a class in Hebrew, maybe we'll be in the class together. That could actually be kind of fun. But what I want to announce is that I am excited to be partnering with them and to provide a discount code. So if you are a watcher of my channel and you decide that you want to take Greek or Hebrew through Kairos, use my name as a discount code. It's just Joel Wentz. When you sign up, you'll get a discount, and that will let them know that you found Kairos through my channel. And I think it could be cool if those of you who watch my stuff, if you want to gain some competence in the biblical languages, and we kind of incorporate that into the community that we're building here in our little corner of the internet, I would love that. And more than anything, I'd be excited if just more people gain some exposure to the ability to learn the languages of the scriptures. So So that is the new partnership that I'm forging with Kairos. Really excited about it. Again, if you take Hebrew, maybe we'll be in the class together. Now, this next one, this is for the discouraged pastor and or parent, or maybe both. I am someone who is both. Not as much discouraged, but I am a pastor and a parent, and someone who is feeling weary of either or both of those life vocations, tired of the parenting struggles, or just tired of the treadmill of ministry, leading a church and being discouraged by things that happen, being hit by crises that they didn't see coming, and they're just tired of all those things. And I know a lot of pastors are also in the stage of young family life, so I think that this would be the sweet spot for a lot of folks like that. But this is the Roots, Andy and Cara Roots, A Pilgrimage into Letting Go. Really loved this book, was also ministered to by this book this year. This is all about, the theme of this book is to encourage individuals who are both parents and or pastors to embrace the reality that we actually cannot control the world. We cannot control the trajectory of so much that happens, and that is very deeply relevant to both the task of parenting. We can't control our kids and their outcomes, and to shepherding a congregation of people. We cannot control people. We cannot control how a church develops, and especially not the things that happen in the context of a church congregation's life. And so this book is really deeply felt. It's very pastoral. There's a lot of autobiographical and self-reflective elements in it because the Roots talk about their own family's journey that they went on, and it's seasoned with deep cultural theory from Hartmut Rosa specifically, but also they go to great lengths to tie it directly to the life of a parent and a pastor. And my wife and I both read this book, and we both were ministered to by it. We both have talked about it a lot in our own parenting as we've reflected on it. And I just think it would make a fantastic gift to someone who is, again, on the tired or burnt out end of either the parenting journey or the pastoring journey. I just think that it's a really unique book that speaks both to those vocations with the same language, but with really deep research, but also approachable writing. And it's very, very inviting and compelling. So I highly recommend that one. Now this next one, I'm gonna touch on some political issues in this video in broad strokes, but this one is for the politically polarized. So this is a book that I imagine. I don't want anyone to be preachy in how they give books to people. Like if you've got someone in your family or a loved one that you're just like totally turned off by their politics, I think it could come off as extremely condescending to hand them this book. But I think what you could do instead is you could offer to read this book with them. I think that could be a really fruitful endeavor, and that is the book When Politics Becomes Heresy by Tim Perry. Loved this little book. This is from Lexham. So this is a lightning rod, a firecracker of a short little book that I just adored. And what I loved about this book so much is it is about politics, but it's actually, that's kind of the hook to get you into what he's talking about, which what he's really talking about is really Christian heresy over church history. So he hooks you in with this idea about politics, but then traces you through the themes of kind of historic Christian heresies over the centuries and the resonances they have with different kind of political machinations and political ideologies that come to the surface in our own time. And I just thought, more than anything, he writes with this verve, this confidence, and this like truly prophetic, not in just being a jerk and just slapping people around kind of way, but like a prophetic poise. And like, this is stuff he's writing with the sense of, this is stuff that people really need to wrestle with in our day and place in our time. And he also is no slouch when it comes to his church history. Like, he's done his homework, and the way he presents heresies like how Arius was thinking, or Pelagius, these things that have been termed heresies over time, he presents them very thoughtfully, very sympathetically when appropriate. He's not just throwing stones, but he's really calling people to the carpet and to repent of heretical ideas, and especially when these things get entangled with our politics. So this, I think, would just be, partly because it's short and because it's so easy to get through and so just compellingly written, I think it could be a great thing to read with other people. So for the politically polarized, I recommend When Politics Becomes Heresy. Now, another political recommendation, I don't have a hard copy with me because I got this one from the library, but this one I'm going to recommend relatedly somewhat. I live in a progressive city, and pastor in a progressive city. And so I get a lot of people who ask me about, like, how do I understand my, like, super right-wing neighbors or family or extended family or friends from my past or whatever, like people who are kind of caught up in the deeply caught up in MAGA nationalistic rhetoric. I get a lot of questions about, like, how do I understand people who are caught up in that. And so one of my top recommendations for that question, now again, this is not someone who's seeking to be condescending. This is not someone who's seeking to be, like, holier than thou or preach down at somebody who's in that, but someone who really, really wants to understand what is going on culturally, politically, institutionally, somewhat theologically, like someone who wants to actually understand some, like, big forces and influencers who have kind of shaped the way that movement has taken hold in our political national consciousness. I highly, highly recommend Matthew Taylor's The Violent Take It by Force. This book kind of blew me away. He maps out this quadrant of belief, quadrant of kind of institutional and charismatic, if you know what that term means theologically or ecclesiologically. He maps that out in this quadrant and kind of maps out the landscape of belief in American Christianity specifically, and it was one of the most helpful kind of analytic tools that I've stumbled across in a book in multiple years that I've read, specifically on kind of what is going on in our political climate. And he also does this really thoughtful and compelling presentation of some of the movers and shakers. You know, you see Peter Wagner, Shea On, Paula White. He presents these folks not in a way, again, he's not condescending and he's not trying to be preachy about any of it. He's really trying to describe and explain, and he does it in a fantastic way in that book. And I put that book down, and I felt after I put it down that I had a much greater understanding of the roots of this movement, the where this movement has gotten traction in our culture, a little bit about why it's gotten traction, definitely I learned a lot more about who has made it what it is and what their motivations may have been, or at least externally what we can measure about their motivations. And I just felt like I understood the energy and the fervor around it so much more after I put that book down. And so for those who are seeking to understand in a genuine, humble way what is going on, I cannot more highly recommend Matthew Taylor's work in that book. Now, we're going to get into some nerdy territory. Not that we haven't already been in nerdy territory, but I want to end with a few more recommendations on the church history nerd. So this is for the person who is really now this is a recommendation for someone who's really into church history, really deeply into it, because I would not get this one for the faint of heart. But that is the person who likes the church fathers, the person who likes to quote the church fathers, maybe if they've read some of that stuff directly, or the person who would like to like the church fathers, who you think is predisposed to want to understand the early centuries of the church, but maybe hasn't I don't know, taken the time to do that yet, but you know that the willingness is there. For that person, this is a hefty one, so get this for someone you really love and someone you're close to, but I recommend John Behr's trilogy, his amazing trilogy, The Formation of Christian Theology. It is a 3-parter. They're all paperbacks, but The Way to Nicaea is the first volume. You could even just get this first volume and then see if the person, how they take to it before you do the 2-part, parts 2 and 3. It's kind of a trilogy, but really it's a first volume, single volume, and then a 2-volume set for the second part. But these books are just outstanding. I adore them so much. They're some of the best, aside from just reading Athanasius and Augustine and so on and so forth, aside from just reading them directly, this is like the best summary, commentary, representation, interpretation, application to today. This is just absolute top shelf, gold standard stuff. I adored reading through this. I read through this because I've been studying the Nicene Creed and specifically the development of 4th century Christian doctrine, because of it being the 1700th year, 2025 to 325 of the Nicene Creed, the Nicene Council. And these books are just astoundingly good. The first volume covers the kind of pre-Nicene era and some of the the churning theological thinking that would flower in the 4th century. Eventually, he covers some people like Clement or Origen, and it's so good and so illuminating. And then the 2 volumes that cover the second and third parts of the trilogy really go into depth on the 4th century itself, and the middle volume of the trilogy, or part 1 of part 2 of the set. It's kind of confusing the way it's labeled, but the first volume in that two-parter has a single chapter that just goes through the chronology of the 4th century, and it is one of the best, most succinct, clear, compelling presentations of just what happened in that century that is relevant to the development of Christian thinking that I've ever read. Ever read. And I'm a big church history fan. I've read a good bit of church history, and this is like at the top of the list for me. So for the church history nerd in your family, I recommend that set. Now, let's veer back into a little bit of, I don't know if this is culturally controversial or not, but I'm going to recommend another book I don't have a copy of that I read this year that I really loved and have thought about a lot. And this is a gift for the person who is addicted to social media. The person, I grant the irony of saying that on a YouTube video. Nevertheless, I would love to give this book to more people. And for the person who is addicted to whatever social media platform it is, who just can't seem to shake it, maybe the person who has, with best intentions, tried to give up social media for Lent, but finds himself going back to it, whatever it may be, the person, or maybe just the person you're genuinely concerned about how much time they spend on their devices. I loved the little book, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now, by Jaron Lanier. I think I'm saying that right. He is one of those guys who is featured in lots of documentaries like The Social Dilemma. He was an kind of on-the-ground level software executive or software designer, coder in, 80s, 90s era Silicon Valley, and has since left and is a forceful advocate against pretty much everything that social media is doing in our culture. And this book it's 10 chapters, just what it says, 10 different arguments, and he brings his wealth of professional experience to it, but also just a sharp writing skill. There's a lot of humor in the book. There's a lot of really biting kind of edge to his argument, like a bit of an anger and a bit of a fire to it in a really motivating way. And that book really decisively changed how I interact with social media. I still do the YouTube thing, but like lots of my other social media stuff, if it hasn't been deleted, it's like basically inactive. And it's a lot because of this guy's arguments. I think they're really persuasive, and I think more people should be aware of not just that this argument exists, but how he is actually putting that argument together. So for the social media addict in your life, I recommend that book. Now, just 2 more recommendations for me that get into some of my, my personal loves that I suspect a lot of people who watch this channel also share, and that is the Inklings. So I'm going to give 2 recommendations. One is going to be for the C.S. Lewis lover in your life, and then one is going to be for the Tolkien lover in your life. And so I'm a huge fan of all things Inklings related, and these are a couple of my most recent favorites. So first, the person who loves C.S. Lewis, the person who loves particularly if they love the Space Trilogy, but if they also love Narnia, if they just love C.S. Lewis in general, and you're looking for something that might complement their love for C.S. Lewis, maybe enrich it or deepen it, then I highly recommend the Life on the Silent Planet volume. That was edited by Riz Laverty, but it has a lot of contributors, people like Michael Ward and Holly Ordway, Louis Marcos, people who are well known for knowing their Lewis material. This is a collection of essays commenting on, interpreting, looking at the thematic elements of Lewis's Space Trilogy. And I am a huge fan, in particular, of the Space Trilogy, which actually they argue you should not call it the Space Trilogy. I'm trying to call it the Ransom Trilogy, even as I say that out loud. I'm a huge fan of the Ransom Trilogy. Perelandra is one of my absolute all-time favorite books by Lewis, bar none. It's just right at the top of the list for me. So I've always loved those books, but I didn't realize how much I loved them until after I read this one. The commentary they apply to those books, some of the thematic stuff that they do related to what C.S. Lewis is doing with gender, for example, in those books, or what C.S. Lewis is doing with commentary on modernity, especially in That Hideous Strength. The ways that Lewis is deconstructing academia and bureaucracy, and the ways Lewis is predicting things like the dehumanization of AI, even. Yes, there's even stuff like that going on in these books that were written decades and decades ago. This is super thoughtful volume of very intelligent scholars who know their Lewis and their Inklings very well, and they do serious careful work on commenting on it, and I also bet most people who like Lewis are maybe not aware of this book in particular, and so that's why I think it would be a fantastic Christmas gift for the Lewis lover in your life. But I adored it. I think about it all the time, and I'm looking forward to rereading it, if I can even maybe read it in conjunction with rereading the Ransom trilogy at some point in the near future. So that's Life on the Silent Planet. And then finally, something deeply close to my heart is Tolkien. I love the Inklings, and I love Tolkien. Lord of the Rings is, I think, my favorite work of fiction in general. I could not read it enough times in my life. I'm actually due for a reread. It's been 5 years since I read it. I'm going to reread it hopefully next year. But so if you love Tolkien, or if someone in your life loves Tolkien, and again, you're looking for something that might complement their love of Tolkien that they likely haven't been exposed to yet, or maybe haven't read yet, that is where I recommend this wonderful biography by Holly Ordway, Tolkien's Faith. Holly Ordway is becoming one of my favorite commenters on Tolkien, actually. She is really impressive in her scholarship, but especially her archival knowledge of Tolkien's writings, Tolkien's letters, Tolkien's kind of personal correspondences with folks, and Tolkien's The Shape of His Life. And so that's where this book comes in. There's a lot of biographies about Tolkien. Tom Shippey is one of the gold standards in terms of biographical works on Tolkien. But what Holly Ordway does here is she looks at Tolkien's life, but really through the lens of his faith and his faith journey. And the lover of Tolkien will gain so much from reading this book. I learned so much about what it meant, for example, for Tolkien to be Catholic, what that meant for him to be Catholic in very Protestant times, very Protestant England, how that may have impacted the way that he thought about the world and his own faith, and even the legacy of his mother's faith in his own life. And then, of course, you do get indications about how this shaped his writing and his academic work, his friendship with Lewis, all of that. All that's in here, but it's very enlightening, very illuminating, but also it's just a wonderfully written book. I'm a fan of biographies, and this is on the end of really well-written biographies, if you put them on a spectrum. Some biographies are interesting because of their subject matter or because of their time and history, and some of them are just really well-written. This is both. This is very well-written. It's very long, but I got through it pretty fast because it's so inviting and so warm, and I just love the subject that it's about. So for the Tolkien lover in your life who maybe doesn't have everything about Tolkien yet, I would recommend very much Holly Ordway's work in Tolkien's Faith. So there you go. There are some recommendations, titles that hit on lots of different topics, cultural stuff, theological stuff, that I categorized arbitrarily because I wanted to highlight these books and encourage people to check them out and buy them for their friends and neighbors and family. So, as always, thank you for taking a few minutes to watch.